Well, of course, I'll add a note here. I think that it was ever referred to, religion, as the faith. It's certainly, I say certainly again, goodness, it's our way of talking, isn't it? We may want it to be a certainty. We may want it to be knowing in that understanding of the definition of knowing, that it's certain, no doubt, no uncertainty. But it's actually called a faith. And to recognize it as a faith, I think makes you much more careful of it than if you thought it was known. If it's known, it's as if once known, it's always known, although in fact that's not quite true. It gets forgotten, doesn't it? Very often knowledge can be forgotten. But trust, well, that sounds like you need an ever ongoing protection and reinforcement of such in case you lose trust. And as I say, some people seem to lose their religion, and this may be extremely upsetting to those that are still in the religion, whatever religion that is. And losing it there may also be including those that simply switch to another religion or even another denomination that's not acceptable to this one. And then it's seen as a horrendous thing, terrible thing to have happened. You know, he's been lost. Is he irretrievable now? You know, is it the unforgivable sin that to know and then disregard, etc., etc. But when we see it in a sense as a trust, then it's understandable. You can be in circumstances where your trust gets battered and you lose your way, so to speak. So we would encourage all such practices as keep the faith. In other words, support the ongoing trust that you flourish and prosper, I think is a fundamental assumption going on in the back of one's mind here. By flourish and prosper, I mean, of course, spiritually, so that, you know, the person who's sacrificed himself is still covered in some sense. He prospers in that he goes to heaven, and as far as the faith is concerned, at least. I think it was part of my initial, what one might refer to as conversion. Back at that sort of age of 24, I realized that religion was, and Christianity in particular, was something about trust. And that there, I think it hit me that there might be a tremendous welfare in this trust. That the trust helps you to achieve so much of what you value, which I would now say was, well, living basically should help you survive both here and into life eternal, on the thesis that the two are actually consistent. Whereas I think at times Christianity has made it that they're opposed to each other. You know, to value long life is not to value going to heaven, that there are alternatives. But if you feel that with the Jesus teachings in the story that the kingdom of heaven's within you and now, you know, it's at hand and you can benefit from it here and now, then that either or state is, you know, we're in the world, yes, but not of it. We're in the kingdom of heaven. That's what's ruling us within. Something of that, isn't it? But importantly, that trust is somehow not dogmatic, shouldn't be, as it degenerates, I might say, into being a religion then, but rather a freedom that you choose. And I suppose I could say that the more you regulate it and ritualize it and confine it, the less creative the trust becomes in a way. And the life is actually reduced rather than flourishing. I'm not sure as it's possible even to say clearly what we start to mean when we get into these sort of questions. I suppose I bounce back to basic principles, so to speak. Well, the parental situation is, we seem to see that if the child doesn't trust the adult, ideally, of course, the adult being most benevolent and helpful to the child, then the child won't flourish and prosper. Should the child not be trusting of the parent that is a menace to the child, there are problems then, aren't there? We're in some sense thinking of the ideal state where the parents are lovely and they really are truly benefiting the child, and the child grows by a respect as such. Succumbs to trust in the goodness of the parent and therefore follows the guidance of the parent to prosperity and life. And whatever our experience might be in the world or observation of others and so on, we might still have this pure notion quite clearly in our mind from the point of view of what we value as opposed to what we might have experienced, which could be quite a kaleidoscope of experiences. I've gone on too long. We're on 18 minutes nearly. But, yeah. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.
Well, growing up in the world takes the pattern, doesn't it, of the child grows up and stops being a child and becomes an adult, and then functions as an adult in the world, choosing his way, not simply according to the parent's direction. Unless you are trapped in an expectation that you will be the inheritor of some considerable wealth, shall we say, and position when your parents leave this world, in which case you will tread very carefully to continue obeying them, whether you love them or not. You will hold up for some time your adult experience here of being a free child of God. How hard it is for they that have riches to enter the kingdom of heaven, says Jesus. And of course one wants to know, and why is that? Well, he's probably greatly reduced his extent of life as an adult here, which gives him opportunity as an adult to do what he thinks according to his values and correct them. You get take what might be assumed to be a classic case. I'm not at all sure as it is, of course, because I know nothing about the personal situation. But King Charles now, in this date, had waited, well, till he was almost dead before he became king. And one wonders how much he was therefore under the control of his mum until she died. You know, Queen Elizabeth II. From the world's point of view, a great queen. As indeed Elizabeth I was, from the world's point of view, a great queen. Well, in fact, Charles seems, in some very significant ways, to have chosen his own way, regardless of perhaps what Mum had hoped, in his choice of marriage and so forth, and divorce, I suppose. I don't know. We don't know, do we? We're the victim of media and propaganda, aren't we? We don't know the truth of things, do we? That's the nonsense to assume we do. But that's the story, if you like. Okay? And we learn from this, don't we? Wouldn't it have been possible for his mum to have just passed on the mantle of being the monarch 20 years earlier? It seemed... I know we managed to live much longer now in many ways because of, well, I'm not sure, but in the case of royalty, it's not good food. They get good food, always have done, but because of medical advances, perhaps, and so on. It's a different world as time goes on, isn't it? But, well, it certainly seems a shame in hindsight to inherit the kingdom, in this case, a worldly kingdom, late. Don't know. What do you think? Well, I'm not a royalist. I'm not anti-royalism. I think a good monarch like Ashoka could be a godsend to a people. And they historistically seem to think that he was. But I do think it presents as one of the examples of the epitome of privilege. I'm not against privilege. Well, the greater one's compassion is for those that don't have it, and a life accordingly. I don't mean sacrificial life where you become poor, that they scarcely become any richer. There's not a great deal of point in that. You'll just be desperately unhappy and have to adjust to a lifestyle that well, you've not been prepared for. Most of the world is prepared for poverty and manages well the way it does. Whereas if a billionaire loses 90% of his billions, he's still a millionaire. But he may commit suicide in despair. Doesn't make sense, does it? But just felt his world came to an end, poor chap. Yeah. And it was unjust, and he's furious, and he dies a man full of regrets and hatred. Poor chap needs rescue, not being to be despised. Yeah? So we have compassion. Why? Because we don't want to see anyone suffer. I don't want to see any creature suffer. I don't care what he's done right or wrong. I don't want him to suffer. I would like him to be reformed, if you like, and to long now to do everything right. Well, that would be just lovely. But I don't want him to suffer. Does God let you suffer in the meantime? Possibly. Could be valid if it's for an infinite, eternal gain, couldn't it? Wouldn't that be the best thing in that case? What do you think, dear one? Well, whatever you think, I hold it, and I think Jesus holds it in the story. God is still your loving, heavenly Dad and cares for you. Bless you. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.